Hi, welcome. My name is Angelique, and today I'm talking about Mercury and Gemini as it relates to astrology. So, this episode is going to focus on this placement and talk about the interests, the communication style, even skills that we can learn from this placement. If it's your first time listening to me, I'm an astrology student of over 30 years and I have a background in counseling, mental health, and psychology. So I love to dive deep. I love to explore anything that's hidden or unconscious, patterns, but also just to see what we can use astrology for as a tool to bring more balance into our life, more fulfillment, more positive energy. And so that doesn't have to just be on a spiritual or energetic level, although astrology is really great for that and for future and prediction. But we can also use astrology to help anything in the material world, in the physical world. So our body, our relationships, our career. It really is good at kind of understanding our whole world and our life, our purpose, and how we can grow from it. So that is how I see the use of astrology for me personally, although I use it for a lot of other ways. But I really like to kind of interpret it and explain it, and I do that through a lens of mythology and symbolism, the four elements, just to really understand like what are some practical things that we can take from astrology for ourselves. So I'm going to start with talking about Gemini and the mythology around it, but from a lens of communication and interest. If you're looking for more about the mythology of Mercury, I would suggest Sun and Gemini podcast episode that I have where I talk more about Mercury as it relates to the sign. But overall, Mercury is the chief of communication. So Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury, and Mercury, the Roman god, is the chief messenger of all the gods. He was kind of the big boss that kind of supervised all of the communication happening. So local travel, shipping, bringing messages back and forth. So he was the person in charge of that, but also he had so many skills, interests, was very curious, and was always kind of working mentally, but also with his hands. So think about literally handing a message to someone. You're using your hands to do that and make sure it's getting there efficiently. So that is what he is known for. And when it comes to Gemini in the sign of Mercury, it's at home. It's what we call domicile. So it's very comfy, cozy here. Now, that's not to say there won't be challenges, but the challenges actually might look different. There might actually be too much of this mental curiosity, and we'll get a little more into that. But Mercury as a god and in mythology just was curious about everything. It was very childlike, and it also, I think, is important to note Mercury is the son of Jupiter. Jupiter rules like bigger communication, maybe more long-term communication or communication across the globe and borders. But Mercury is literally the child of Jupiter. So it's going to be smaller communication. It's going to be quick bites, a lot of different things happening. So when we think of Gemini and the curiosity that comes with it, they're going to be curious about a lot of things, but only certain things are going to pique their interest. And if it's not immediately interesting, they're going to move on. So that is where some of the challenge can be, is to keep people with Mercury and Gemini placements curious for a long time to complete something if they do get bored, because that boredom can happen really quick. Like I said, Mercury, that energy just wants to go quick and be done and move on. So thinking of Gemini, they want to send a quick message, email, whatever it is, letter, and just be done with it. But having to sit and wait for a while to maybe compose a large email with all these attachments and this other stuff, and like a message that could take an hour or so could be more draining and boring for them, but just like quick things. So when it comes to actual communication one-on-one, the same is pretty much true. They like communication with other people where there's a back and forth. There's a quick, what we would call a volley, just like a volleyball. You're playing the game and it's going back and forth pretty quickly. That's I would say, an ideal conversation for someone who has this placement, and their communication style is going to reflect that as well. It might be witty, there might be some little tidbits here and there might be some knowledge that they're giving, and they like to be social and light and just have a nice back and forth. So something like an office setting would actually be a good environment for people with this placement, because it gives this light buzz throughout, but none of it is super deep or long-winded or intense. It's more light buzz and chattering. So I think of Mercury and Gemini like in something like this, like an office setting, or a classroom that's more like conversation based, where you can just chat people up, like briefly, like, oh, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went there before. Did you check out this? Because this is, and so, but then that conversation can end, and then they can go talk to someone else, or then they can send an email, or they can I'm laughing, but hop on a call, quote unquote, so they can do that for like 20 minutes and then they go back. So they like to have a lot of variety in their day, but the variety needs to be something they're interested in, and it's got to have like a quick format, sharing knowledge in a lighter way. When it comes to symbolism here, it is very air meets air. So we have air of Mercury meets air of Gemini. So as I said before, this can be too much of a good thing, but it's going to be really easy for someone in this placement to make friends, to be the star worker of an office environment, or a class clown, or just like very social in a positive way. They might really light up when it comes to sharing information, being a teacher, and that's because air likes to move and be fluid and not stay in one place. So Gemini here is like, this is great. I want to stay here. I'm giving the image of, you see like a gust of wind and it's moving through the tree, and then it's going to a field of grass, and then it's going to the ocean. So that's how Mercury and Gemini really gets along, is that the information, there's an ease to the versatility that it has. It's a very flexible placement when it comes to ideas and thoughts and communication. So interests are going to be the same way. There is going to be maybe a mass variety of the things they like, and the things they like might not be the same thing for a very long time. They can maybe pick up an interest and then a week or two later master it and get bored of it and move on. Mercury, also, this air quality is really focused on the hands. Hands are what we see for Mercury. So with Gemini here, this is someone who can be really interested in things that are hands-on, but in a smaller way. So not something like heavy lifting, but something more like fine motor based. So drawing, typing, any type of like puzzles, things like that, where there doesn't need to be a heavy hand, but it's still using the hands to make something away. A lot of instrumentalists have Mercury in Gemini because of that need to be very dexterous, to be flexible, to learn a lot of information and move and back and forth and remember and recall information. So bringing in this Mercury and Gemini energy in the day-to-day would look like someone who has a lot of activities, a lot of mental stimulation. However, there can be some nervous energy or even overstimulation if care is not taken into place. So that what that would look like is having a lot of things to do during the day, but making sure you're taking time to take mini breaks. I know it might be hard to not think or do something every moment of every day, but just giving time to rest, even if it's not a full nap, just like a moment where you turn your phone off, you're not doing an activity or a skill or you're learning anything, and you're just kind of resting. Maybe you're sitting with an animal or you go on a walk in a park. But this is one of the few Mercury placements where I would say more activities probably would be better because of that need, that built up of nervous energy. So someone who has Mercury and Gemini, and maybe they're not having a lot of tasks to switch through the day, or they have a completely empty schedule. This can build up nervous energy really quickly, which can lead to anxiety, or just like overthinking, because your that phrase idle hands or devil's playthings, that I feel like they were speaking about Mercury and Gemini specifically. You sit too long with your thoughts, you really start to think about everything and overthink, and that can lead to fear or anxiety or just overwhelm. So it's good to have different tasks to stay mentally stimulated throughout the day. Like I said, that office environment could be really good, or even if you are somebody that works for yourself, making sure that you have friends or partners or family members that you can call or text throughout the day, have these conversations, sharing memes, sharing information like, oh, did you see this article? That can actually be really healing and stress relieving for someone with Mercury and Gemini, is getting information and sharing it back, that volley. So we want to think about that. So a lot of people with Mercury and Gemini can be really great, as I said, teachers, but also blogging, journalists is a good thing because you are sharing this information to people. And especially in the age of social media and internet, you're able to get that feedback back almost immediately. So it can be very enticing. Another style or factor of communication with people with this placement is their communication is usually very clear. They love clear communication. It can be almost very stressful to be with someone who is not a clear communicator. So someone who's maybe more indirect, or they have a very confusing way of talking. It can really stress them out, and so it's important to have some have some patience and some kindness with other people, because that can lead to a big stress. So the more clear the communication, the more someone with Mercury and Gemini is going to respond favorably to that person. And having someone in their world in a long-term capacity, like a really good friend or a romantic partner, uh, the communication needs to be on point. It's got to be clear. It's going to be a hard a mismatch for them. So that is just something. So we really see a lot of public speakers that have this placement. They're just able to get this knowledge and present it in very clear ways, very efficient, concise. I think of how a lot of social media makes you very concise. And the people who have Mercury and Gemini are usually the best at that, that they can get a pretty big idea into a few sentences and make it make sense. It's clear, people understand it, and it's probably engaging. So you just think of this youthful quality that someone has Mercury and Gemini. Like, they are probably always going to have a curiosity, an openness to different things, which is great, especially in old age. It's the difficult thing might just be finding something you're interested in or something you haven't done yet, because there's probably a lot of things that they have done. So if you have Mercury and Gemini, and trying to have skills, hobbies, especially that involve your hand or some kind of fun mental stimulation like puzzles, can be really helpful in your day to day. And having social situations or talking with friends, conversations where there's a back and forth, can be great to bring into your life daily. All right. Thank you so much. If you have Mercury and Gemini, I'd love to hear how this resonates for you and comes up. But otherwise, thank you so much again for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.